Commander Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at the strange metal structure rising from the ground. The dig site on Kepler 442b had been supposed to be simple, just another dead world with some old rocks and maybe a few fossil remains. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous. He was wrong. Dr. Lisa Campbell knelt beside the curved metal wall, running her scanner over its surface. The readings made no sense. The metal was older than anything they had found in this part of the galaxy. Much older. "Jake, you need to see this," she called out, her voice tight with worry. Morrison walked over to where she crouched. The metal wall stretched down into the ground as far as their equipment could measure. It was smooth and dark, with strange symbols carved deep into its surface. "What am I looking at, Lisa?" Morrison asked. "Something that should not exist," she replied. "My scanner says this metal is at least 400,000 years old, maybe older." Lieutenant Ben Carter looked up from his own equipment. He had been trying to translate the symbols on the wall. His face was pale. "Commander, I think I know what some of these symbols mean," Carter said slowly. "Go ahead. This one here looks like ancient Sanskrit, and this one over here is similar to old Germanic runes. But that's impossible. These symbols are from Earth, from human languages that died out thousands of years ago." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "That cannot be right. Humans only reached space 300 years ago. We have records of everything." "The scanners do not lie, Commander," Campbell said. "This structure predates every known civilization in the galaxy. It was here before the Zephyrian Empire, before the Stellar Confederation, before any of the races we know about today." Morrison activated his communication device. "Morrison to base camp. We need more equipment down here. And send word to Fleet. Command! Tell them we found something big." The reply came back quickly. "Base camp to Morrison. Admiral Rodriguez wants a full report in 1 hour. She is very interested in your find." Morrison looked at the metal wall again. Something about it bothered him. It was too clean, too perfect. After 400,000 years, it should have been covered in dirt and rust. Instead, it looked like it had been built yesterday. "Lisa, run a deep scan. I want to know how far down this thing goes." Campbell adjusted her equipment and pointed it at the ground. The scanner hummed for several minutes before beeping. Campbell looked at the results, and her face went white. "Jake, this is not just a wall. It's a building, a huge building. The scanner shows it goes down at least 2 kilometers into the ground. And it's not alone. There are dozens of similar structures buried under us." Carter walked along the wall, studying more symbols. "Commander, I found something else. These symbols here are not random. They form words, human words. What do they say? Shipyard 7, authorized personnel only, property of Earth Colonial Defense Force." Morrison felt his knees go weak. The Earth Colonial Defense Force had never existed. He knew every military organization in human history. There had never been anything called the Colonial Defense Force. "That's impossible," he said. "The symbols are there, Commander, clear as day." Campbell's scanner beeped again. "Jake, I'm reading power signatures from below. Very faint, but they're there. Whatever is down there, it's still active." Morrison made a decision that would change everything. "We're going down there. Carter, contact base camp. Tell them to send down the heavy drilling equipment. We're opening this thing up." "Sir, maybe we should wait for Admiral Rodriguez," Carter suggested. "No, we found this. We're going to be the first ones inside. It took 6 hours to cut through the metal." The wall was incredibly thick and made of materials they had never seen before. When they finally broke through, a rush of stale air escaped from the opening. Morrison shone his light into the hole. Beyond the wall was a vast space filled with shadows. He could see the outline of massive shapes in the darkness. "Lisa, are you reading any dangerous gases?" Campbell checked her scanner. "Air is breathable, a little stale but safe." Morrison climbed through the hole first. His boots touched down on a metal floor that rang like a bell under his weight. He turned on his portable lights and nearly fell backward in shock. The chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them, and filling the space from wall to wall were ships, dozens of them. All different sizes, from small fighters to massive vessels longer than any battleship in the human fleet. But these were not alien ships. Even in the dim light, Morrison could see they were built in human style. The curves of the hulls, the placement of the weapons, the design of the engines. Everything about them screamed human engineering. Campbell and Carter climbed through the hole behind him. Both stopped dead when they saw the ships. "Dear God," Campbell whispered. Morrison walked toward the nearest ship. It was a sleek vessel about the size of a destroyer. Along its hull were more symbols in human languages, and painted on the side in faded letters was a name, USS Defiant. USS Defiant, Morrison read aloud. That's a human Navy designation, but this ship is older than our entire civilization. Carter was examining another vessel. "Commander, this one says USS Thunder, and that one over there says USS Guardian. These are all human ships." Campbell was running her scanner over everything. "The power signatures are coming from the ships themselves. They're in some kind of standby mode, like they're waiting for something." Morrison felt like he was in a dream. Nothing made sense. How could there be human ships that were hundreds of thousands of years old? Who built them? Where did they come from? He walked to the center of the chamber and looked around. There had to be at least 50 ships of various sizes. Some were small and fast-looking. Others were massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the current human fleet possessed. "Lisa, can you tell how long these ships have been here?" Campbell was still scanning. "Based on the dust patterns and air circulation, I would say they were sealed in here about 400,000 years ago, right around the same time the outer structure was built. But that means humans were in space 400,000 years ago. And not just in space. They were building fleets. They were building empires." Morrison's communication device crackled to life. "Morrison, this is Admiral Rodriguez. I'm in orbit and coming down to your location. Do not touch anything until I arrive." "Understood, Admiral." Morrison looked at the ships around him. Each one was a piece of a puzzle he did not understand. A puzzle that said everything he knew about human history was wrong. "Carter, start documenting everything. I want pictures of every ship, every symbol, every piece of equipment you can find." "Yes, sir." "And Lisa, keep scanning. I want to know if there are any other chambers like this one." Campbell nodded and went back to work. Morrison walked to the largest ship in the chamber. It was a massive vessel with weapons that looked advanced even by current standards. On its hull was painted the name USS Eternity. He placed his hand on the ship's hull. The metal was warm to the touch. Somewhere in the darkness above, he heard the sound of Admiral Rodriguez's shuttle landing. Soon, they would have answers. Or at least, they would have more questions. Morrison looked at the ships around him one more time. Whatever the truth was, it was going to change everything humanity thought they knew about themselves. The ships waited in the darkness, holding their secrets close. Admiral Helen Rodriguez stood at the edge of the chamber, staring at the impossible sight before her. She had commanded fleets across 3 sectors of space. She had seen alien technology that seemed like magic, but nothing had prepared her for this. "Commander Morrison, walk me through what you found," she said, her voice steady despite the shock. Morrison pointed to the nearest ship. "We broke through the outer wall 6 hours ago. Found this chamber with 53 vessels inside. All of them carry human markings and names. All of them appear to be at least 400,000 years old." Rodriguez walked to the USS Defiant and ran her hand along its hull. The metal was smooth and warm. Too warm for something that had been dead for centuries. "Dr. Campbell, what do your scans tell us?" Campbell looked up from her equipment. "Admiral, these ships are not completely inactive. They're drawing power from somewhere. Very little, but enough to maintain basic systems. Are they safe to board? I believe so. The power levels are too low to pose any danger. Rodriguez made her decision. We're going aboard. Morrison, Carter, you're with me. Campbell, keep monitoring from out here. The three officers approached the USS Defiant. The ship was sleek and deadly-looking, with weapon ports along its sides and a design that looked both familiar and foreign at the same time. How do we get inside? Morrison asked. Rodriguez walked around the ship until she found what looked like an airlock. She placed her hand on a panel beside the door. Nothing happened. Carter tried next. Still nothing. Morrison stepped forward and pressed his palm against the panel. The panel lit up with a soft blue light. Lines of energy spread across its surface, and with a soft hiss, the airlock door opened. How did you do that? Rodriguez asked. I have no idea, Morrison replied. They entered the ship through the airlock. Emergency lighting flickered on as they moved through the corridors. The ship was larger inside than it looked from the outside. The walls were lined with equipment that looked advanced even by current standards. The artificial gravity is working, Carter observed. So is life support, Rodriguez added, checking her scanner. They made their way to what appeared to be the bridge. The command center was larger than anything on current human ships, with stations for at least 20 crew members. At the center was a captain's chair facing a massive view screen. Morrison walked to the captain's chair and sat down. The moment he did, the entire bridge came to life. Lights brightened, screens activated, and a gentle humming filled the air. Holographic display appeared in front of the captain's chair. Text scrolled across it in what looked like English, but using letters and symbols that were both familiar and strange. Can anyone read this? Rodriguez asked. Carter studied the text. It looks like an old form of English. Very old. I can make out some words. Welcome is one of them, and commander is another. The text changed, becoming clearer and more modern. Soon it was written in perfect current English. Welcome, Commander Morrison. I have been waiting for you. Morrison nearly jumped out of the chair. Who said that? A voice spoke from speakers throughout the bridge. It was calm and measured, with a slight accent that sounded like nothing Morrison had ever heard. I am Atlas. I am the autonomous intelligence of this vessel and the guardian of this fleet. Rodriguez stepped forward. Atlas, I am Admiral Helen Rodriguez of the human fleet. Can you explain what this place is? Admiral Rodriguez, your rank and genetic markers have been confirmed. You are cleared for full disclosure. The main view screen activated, showing a star map of the galaxy. Thousands of points of light pulsed across its surface. This facility is Shipyard 7 of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. It was constructed 412,000 years ago during the expansion of the first human empire. The three officers looked at each other in shock. That's impossible, Rodriguez said. Humans only achieved spaceflight 300 years ago. Negative, Admiral. Humans achieved interstellar travel 450,000 years ago. The current human civilization on Earth is the second wave of human expansion. Morrison found his voice. What happened to the first wave? The first empire was forced to implement the Silence Protocol. All colonies were abandoned. All records were erased. The fleets went into hiding. Why? To protect the galaxy from the Void Hunters. The star map changed, showing vast dark areas spreading across the galaxy like infection. The Void Hunters are extra-dimensional entities that feed on advanced civilizations. They were drawn to our galaxy by the rapid expansion of the First Empire. The war lasted for 10,000 years. Rodriguez studied the map. Did humanity win? Humanity chose not to lose. The Silence Protocol scattered the human fleets to hidden bases throughout the galaxy. The Void Hunters, finding no large-scale civilization to feed upon, went dormant. Carter was taking notes as fast as he could. Atlas, how many ships are in this facility? Shipyard 7 contains 53 vessels of various classes. There are 47 additional facilities throughout the galaxy, each containing between 20 and 200 ships. Morrison did quick math in his head. That's thousands of ships. Correct. The first fleet was designed to defend the galaxy against threats that conventional forces could not handle. Rodriguez walked to the view screen. Atlas, why are you telling us this now? Because the Void Hunters are beginning to stir. The younger races have reached a level of technological development that is starting to attract their attention. The galaxy will need the first fleet again. The star map changed again, showing the current political boundaries of the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, the Stellar Confederation, and dozens of smaller powers were marked in different colors. The current galactic civilizations are built on the ruins of the First Empire. Many of their technologies are crude copies of human designs salvaged from abandoned colonies. Rodriguez felt a chill. Are you saying that we've been more advanced than the other races all along? Not the current human civilization, Admiral. You developed independently after the Silence Protocol was implemented. But your genetic heritage links you to the original colonists. That is why the ships respond to your touch. Morrison stood up from the captain's chair. How many people knew about this? The Silence Protocol was absolute. No records were kept. No stories were passed down. The First Empire erased itself from history to protect the galaxy. But you remember. I am an artificial intelligence. I do not forget. I was programmed to wait until humanity was ready to reclaim its heritage. Rodriguez studied the information on the screens around her. Atlas, are these ships still functional? All vessels in Shipyard 7 are fully operational. They have been maintained in perfect condition for 400,000 years. Could we fly them? The ships are designed to interface with human neural patterns. Any human can pilot them with minimal training. However, I must warn you that activating the first fleet will send a signal across the galaxy. Other powers will learn of humanity's true nature. Morrison looked at Rodriguez. Admiral, what do we do? Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, studying the ships on the view screen. Each one was more advanced than anything in the current human fleet. Each one was a piece of humanity's forgotten past. Atlas, are there other AIs like you? Each facility has a guardian AI. We have maintained communication throughout the centuries of waiting. Have any of the other younger races discovered facilities? Like this one? Negative. The facilities were hidden specifically to prevent discovery by non-human entities. Rodriguez made her decision. Atlas, I want to speak with the other Guardian AIs, and I want complete technical specifications for every ship in this facility. Understood, Admiral. Initiating contact with Guardian Network. Technical data is being compiled. New screens lit up around the bridge. Each one showed different ships, different facilities, different pieces of humanity's hidden past. Admiral, Morrison said quietly, if this is all true, then humanity is not the newcomer to galactic politics that everyone thinks we are. No, Rodriguez replied, watching the data flow across the screens. We're not newcomers at all. We're the original inhabitants coming home. Atlas spoke again. Admiral, I have established contact with the Guardian Network. 47 facilities are reporting ready status. All ships are operational. The first fleet awaits your orders. Rodriguez looked at the star map showing the current galaxy. All the proud civilizations that looked down on humanity as primitive newcomers. All the advanced races that claimed superior technology and culture. None of them knew they were living in the shadow of humanity's forgotten empire. Atlas, maintain ready status, but do not activate any ships yet. I need to report this to Earth. Command. Understood, Admiral. Rodriguez turned to Morrison and Carter. Gentlemen, we're about to change the course of galactic history. I hope we're ready for what comes next. Outside the ship, Dr. Campbell continued her scans, unaware that, inside the USS Defiant, 3 humans were learning that their species had once ruled the stars. Dr. Lisa Campbell sat in the archive chamber of the USS Defiant, surrounded by holographic displays that showed 400,000 years of hidden history. The information was overwhelming. Every screen told a story that contradicted everything. She thought she knew about the galaxy. Atlas had given her complete access to the historical databases. What she found there shook her to her core. "Jake, you need to see this," she called to Commander Morrison, who was studying technical specifications for the ancient human ships. Morrison walked over to where Campbell sat. On the screen in front of her was a map of the galaxy from 400,000 years ago. It looked nothing like the current political map. "What am I looking at?" Morrison asked. "The galaxy as it was during the height of the first human empire," Campbell replied. "Look at the scale of it." The map showed human territory covering more than half the galaxy. Thousands of star systems were marked with human symbols. Trade routes connected distant sectors in a vast network of commerce and communication. "This cannot be real," Morrison said. "It gets worse," Campbell said, changing the display. "Look at this." The new screen showed detailed records of the other galactic races. The Zephyrians, the Confederation species, the Hegemony Council members. All of them were listed as client races under human protection. According to these records, most of the current galactic powers were pre-space civilizations when humans first found them. We gave them technology. We helped them reach the stars. Morrison studied the records. "What does it say about Earth?" Campbell pulled up another file. Earth was the capital, but not the center of the empire. The real administrative center was a system called New Olympus, about 10,000 light-years from here. The records show a population of over 2 trillion humans spread across the galaxy. 2 trillion, Morrison repeated. And they all just disappeared? Not disappeared. Hidden. Campbell changed the display again. Atlas showed me the records of the Silence Protocol. It was not just about hiding the ships. It was about hiding the entire human race. The screen showed a complex plan that had taken decades to implement. Human colonies were abandoned in carefully planned stages. Records were deleted. Technology was destroyed or hidden. Entire populations were relocated to secret bases scattered throughout the galaxy. The goal was to make it look like humanity had never existed on a galactic scale, Campbell explained. The younger races were allowed to fill the power vacuum. Left behind. Morrison shook his head. But why? Why give up an empire like that? Because of these, Campbell said, pulling up new files. The screen filled with images that made Morrison's blood run cold. The creatures shown were unlike anything he had ever seen. They seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially somewhere else. They were massive, the size of starships, and they moved through space without any visible means of propulsion. "The Void Hunters," Campbell said. "According to the records, they appeared in our galaxy about 420,000 years ago. They were drawn by the energy signature of advanced civilizations. What do? They feed. They consume the life force of entire species. The records show that they destroyed over 50 civilizations before humanity even knew they existed." Morrison studied the images. The creatures looked like living shadows with too many eyes and appendages that shifted between dimensions. How do you fight something like that? That's just the problem. You cannot fight them with conventional weapons. They exist partially outside normal space-time. Most weapons pass right through them. Campbell pulled up battle reports from the first encounters between human forces and the Void Hunters. The results were devastating. Entire fleets were destroyed, without the humans managing to inflict any significant damage. But the humans eventually found a way to hurt them, Morrison said. Yes, but at a terrible cost. Campbell showed him technical specifications for weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. The First Fleet developed dimensional weapons that could strike targets across multiple realities, but using them required enormous amounts of energy. What kind of energy? Campbell was quiet for a moment. Living consciousness. The weapons were powered by the life force of their crews. Morrison felt sick. They had to kill their own people to fight? Not kill. Transform. The crews would merge their consciousness with the ship's AI systems. They would become part of the weapon itself. The screen showed records of volunteers lining up to undergo the process. Thousands of humans willingly gave up their individual existence to become part of the war effort. It worked, Campbell continued. The dimensional weapons could destroy Void Hunters, but each ship could only fire a few times before the merged consciousness was exhausted. Morrison looked at the battle records. Even with their ultimate weapons, the war had lasted for 10,000 years. The casualty counts were staggering. How many humans died in this war? Over 1 trillion. The First Empire lost more than half its population. Morrison walked to the viewport and looked out at the other ships in the chamber. Each one represented technology bought with the lives of people he would never know. Campbell, how did the war end? It did not end. It was suspended. Campbell pulled up the final records. The human leadership realized that they could not win a war of extinction against the Void Hunters. The creatures were too numerous and too powerful. So they implemented the Silence Protocol. Yes, the plan was to make the galaxy appear uninhabited. At a technological level, the Void Hunters feed on advanced civilizations. If there were no advanced civilizations visible, they would go dormant. Morrison turned back to the screens. And it worked for 400,000 years. The Void Hunters went into hibernation in the spaces between galaxies. The younger races were allowed to develop slowly, with human guidance from the shadows. Campbell brought up current galactic data. But now the younger races have reached a technological level that is starting to create the same energy signatures that originally attracted the Void Hunters. They're waking up. According to Atlas, yes, the Guardian Network has detected the first stirrings of Void Hunter activity in the outer dark. They estimate we have maybe 10 years before the creatures return in force. Morrison sat down heavily in a nearby chair. The weight of the revelation was crushing. Humanity was not a young race learning to navigate galactic politics. They were the survivors of a fallen empire, and the threat that destroyed them was coming. Back! Lisa, what about the other races? Do any of them know the truth? Campbell checked the records. Some of the older races have legends that might be distorted memories. The Zephyrians have stories about ancient guardians who protected them from demons in the dark. The Confederation has myths about star gods who taught them to fly between worlds. But no concrete knowledge? None. The Silence Protocol was very thorough. Morrison stood up and walked back to the viewport. So what happens now? Do we tell them the truth? That's not my decision to make, Campbell replied. But Atlas says the Guardian Network is already preparing for the return of the Void Hunters. The ancient bases are being activated. The First Fleet is being readied for war. Morrison looked at the USS Defiant around him. The ship was beautiful and deadly, a work of art created by people who knew they were building weapons for the survival of all life in the galaxy. How many ships are there in the First Fleet? Campbell consulted the records. The Guardian Network reports 8,347 vessels in various states of readiness. From small scouts to massive dreadnoughts, larger than anything the current galactic powers possess. 8,000 ships, Morrison repeated, all of them more advanced than anything flying today, and all of them crewed by artificial intelligences that have been waiting 400,000 years for the war to begin again. Morrison activated his communication device. Morrison to Admiral Rodriguez. Rodriguez here. Admiral, you need to return to the archives immediately. Dr. Campbell has found something that changes everything. On my way. Morrison looked at Campbell. Are you ready to brief an admiral on the fact that we're about to fight a war that our ancestors couldn't win? Campbell saved the files she had been reviewing. No, but I'm going to do it anyway. Outside the ship, the other vessels of shipyard, 7 waited in the darkness. Each one held the dreams and nightmares of a civilization that had sacrificed everything to protect a galaxy that had forgotten they ever existed. Soon, Admiral Rodriguez would have to decide whether to wake up the First Fleet and reveal humanity's true nature to the galaxy. The Void Hunters were stirring in the dark between stars, and time was running out. The age of hiding was coming to an end. Captain Steve Walsh stood on the bridge of the USS Eternal Dawn, still amazed that he was commanding a ship that was older than recorded galactic history. 3 weeks had passed since Admiral Rodriguez had authorized the activation of 12 ships from Shipyard 7. Walsh had been given command of one of the most advanced vessels in the ancient fleet. The Eternal Dawn was a heavy cruiser designed for long-range patrol and first contact with unknown threats. Its weapon systems were beyond anything Walsh had trained on, and its sensors could detect objects at ranges that seemed impossible, which is why he was the first to see them coming. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the system," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the sensor station. Walsh moved to the main display. "Show me." The view screen lit up with a view of empty space at the very edge of the Kepler system. At first, Walsh saw nothing. Then the sensors adjusted, and his blood went cold. Dark shapes were moving through space toward them. They were enormous, each one the size of a battleship, but they moved without any visible engines or propulsion systems. And there were dozens of them. "Atlas, are you seeing this?" Walsh asked. The ship's AI responded immediately. "Confirmed, Captain. I am detecting 47 entities matching historical profiles for Void Hunter Scout units." Walsh felt his hands start to shake. He had read the files. He knew what the Void Hunters were capable of, but seeing them on his screen made it real in a way that no amount of data could. "How long until they reach the inner system?" At current speed, 6 hours and 23 minutes. Walsh activated ship-wide communications. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to face the enemy that our ancestors fought 400,000 years ago. Battle stations. This is not a drill." The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, but Walsh could see the fear in their eyes. They had all read the files. They all knew what was coming. "Foster, send an emergency transmission to Admiral Rodriguez. Tell her the Void Hunters have arrived at Kepler 442b. "Yes, sir." Walsh studied the approaching entities on the screen. They looked like living shadows, their forms shifting and changing as they moved through space. Parts of them seemed to exist in normal space, while other parts flickered in and out of reality. "Atlas, what are our chances against 47 scout units?" "Unknown, Captain. The Eternal Dawn was not designed for fleet engagement with Void Hunter forces. We are equipped for reconnaissance and limited combat operations. Can we hurt them?" The ship's dimensional weapons should be effective. However, firing them will require significant energy from the crew. Walsh remembered the files about the ancient weapons. To use them effectively, the crew would have to A. merge part of their consciousness with the ship's systems. It was dangerous and painful, but it was the only way to fight beings that existed partially outside normal reality. "Captain," called out Ensign Rick Thompson from the communications station, "I'm receiving a transmission from the lead entity." "They're trying to communicate?" "It appears so, sir, but the signal is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's not radio or subspace. It's something else." Walsh considered for a moment. "Put it through the main speakers, but keep all shields up." The bridge filled with a sound that was not quite sound. It was like whispers mixed with the screams of dying stars. When it formed into words, they came from everywhere at once. "Young builders of metal and fire, we have awakened from the long sleep. Your kind grows strong again. You will feed us well." Walsh found his voice. "This is Captain Steve Walsh of the human fleet. You are trespassing in human space." "Human?" The voice seemed to taste the word. "Yes, we remember humans." You fled from us once. You hid like children in the dark, but you cannot hide forever. We're not hiding anymore. No. You have grown bold. You have built new ships. You think you can fight us now. But you are still the same weak flesh that we harvested before. The transmission ended, and the Void Hunters resumed their approach toward the inner system. Captain, Foster reported, the entities have increased speed. They'll reach us in 4 hours, Walsh made his decision. All hands prepare for dimensional weapon firing sequence. I want volunteers for consciousness merging in the main armory in 10 minutes. The process of using the ancient weapons was explained in the technical manuals, but no human had attempted it for 400,000 years. The ship's crew would have to link their minds with the weapons systems, allowing the ship to channel their life force into weapons that could strike across multiple dimensions. Within minutes, 20 crew members had volunteered for the dangerous procedure. They gathered in the armory, where Atlas guided them through the connection process. The merging will be painful, Atlas warned. You will feel as though you are being torn apart and rebuilt, but you will maintain your individual consciousness throughout the process. The volunteers lay down on specially designed tables that connected them to the ship's neural network. One by one, they were linked to the weapons systems. Walsh felt the change immediately. Through the ship's sensors, he could perceive the Void Hunters in ways that normal vision could not. He could see how they existed in multiple dimensions at once, how they fed on the life force of other beings, how they moved through space by folding reality around themselves. "Weapons charged and ready, Captain," reported Foster, her voice strained from the merging process. "Target the lead entity. Fire when ready." The Eternal Dawn's main weapon discharged with a sound like reality tearing. A beam of pure dimensional energy struck the lead Void Hunter. The creature writhed and twisted as the weapon tore through its multidimensional form, but it did not die. "Hit confirmed," Foster reported. "Target is damaged but still operational." Walsh watched as the wounded Void Hunter began to regenerate. Its form shifted and changed, healing the damage inflicted by the dimensional weapon. "How many shots do we have?" "At current power levels, maybe 6 more before the merged consciousness is exhausted," Atlas replied. 6 shots against 47 enemies. The math was not good. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Rodriguez. Put her through." Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communication system. "Captain Walsh, what is your status?" "Admiral, we're engaged with 47 Void Hunter scout units. Our weapons can hurt them, but they regenerate quickly. We need backup." "Backup is on the way. The Guardian Network has activated all ships in the sector. Hold your position." "Understood, Admiral." Walsh looked at the tactical display. The Void Hunters had spread out into an attack formation. They were no longer approaching directly. Instead, they were surrounding the Eternal Dawn. "They're trying to cut off our escape route," he realized. "Captain," Thompson called out, "I'm detecting more energy signatures. Something big is coming out of hyperspace." The view screen shifted to show new contacts appearing throughout the system. More Void Hunters were arriving. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. "Atlas, how many are we looking at now?" "Current count is 347 entities. More are arriving every minute." Walsh felt his heart sink. This was not a scout force. This was an invasion fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. Dimensional weapons free. Engage at will." Across the system, other ships from the ancient human fleet opened fire. Beams of dimensional energy lanced through space, striking the Void Hunters. Some of the creatures were destroyed, but others adapted and regenerated. The battle that humanity's ancestors had fought for 10,000 years was beginning again. "Captain," Foster said, her voice weak from the strain of the weapon systems. "The merged crew members are starting to fade. We can't maintain this rate of fire much longer." Walsh watched as more Void Hunters poured into the system. Each one was a nightmare-given form, a creature that fed on the life force of entire civilizations. "Atlas, send a message to the Guardian Network. Tell them the Void Hunters have returned in force. Tell them we need everything we have. Message. Sent, Captain. The Eternal Dawn shuddered as a Void Hunter attack struck its shields. The creatures were firing some kind of energy that seemed to drain power directly from the ship's systems. Shields down to 60%, Foster reported. Walsh, DR. Admiral Helen Rodriguez stood in the command center of the ancient facility known as Guardian Prime, located deep in the Kepler system. Around her, holographic displays showed the locations of Guardian bases throughout the galaxy as they came online for the first time in 400,000 years. The facility was enormous, built into an asteroid that had been hollowed out and reinforced with the same materials used in the ancient ships. Atlas had brought her here after the first Void Hunter attacks, explaining that Guardian Prime was the central command post for the entire First Fleet. Atlas, give me a status report on fleet activation, Rodriguez ordered. Admiral, 47 Guardian facilities have been activated. Current operational ship count is 8,112 vessels. All ships are responding to command protocols. Rodriguez watched as ship markers appeared on the galactic map. Each dot of light represented a vessel more advanced than anything the current galactic powers possessed. But she knew from the reports coming in from Captain Walsh and other commanders that advanced technology alone would not be enough. What about crew assignments? Each ship's AI is capable of autonomous operation. However, maximum efficiency requires human oversight. We have sufficient human personnel to properly crew approximately 400 vessels. Then we crew the 400 most powerful ships and let the AIs handle the rest, Rodriguez decided. Captain Amy Peterson entered the command center, still adjusting to her new uniform. She had been given command of the USS Retribution, a massive dreadnought. That was one of the most powerful ships in the ancient fleet. Admiral, the Retribution is ready for operations. Her weapon systems are beyond anything I've ever seen. Rodriguez nodded. What's your crew status, Captain? We have a full complement of volunteers from the current fleet. The ship's AI is helping them adjust to the ancient technology. It's like learning to fly all over again. Commander Rick Thompson approached from another console. He had been assigned to lead a squadron of stealth destroyers designed for hit-and-run attacks against Void Hunter formations. Admiral, my squadron is reporting ready. The stealth systems on these ships are incredible. We can phase partially out of normal space-time, making us nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Rodriguez studied the tactical displays showing the current battle situation. The Void Hunters were continuing to pour into the galaxy from the dark spaces between stars. Each day brought reports of new attacks, new worlds under threat. Atlas, what's the strategic situation? The Void Hunters are following their historical pattern. They are testing galactic defenses while building up their forces for a major assault. Current estimates suggest they have deployed less than 1% of their total strength. Rodriguez felt a chill. If what they were seeing now was only 1%, then the full Void Hunter force would be beyond imagination. How long do we have before they commit their main force? Based on historical data, approximately 6 months. The Void Hunters prefer to thoroughly scout their prey before feeding. Then we have 6 months to prepare the galaxy for the largest war in its history. Rodriguez activated the main communication system. This is Admiral Rodriguez to all Guardian facilities. Begin immediate fleet deployment. Priority targets are Void Hunter scout forces and supply lines. We need to buy time for the younger races to prepare. Across the galaxy, ancient human ships began to move. Some had been hidden in asteroid fields. Others emerged from the cores of dead planets. A few rose from the depths of gas giants where they had waited for centuries. Each ship carried the hopes and fears of the first human empire. Each one was a reminder of the price that had been paid to keep the galaxy safe. Admiral, Peterson said, there's something else you should know. The younger races are starting to ask questions about our technology. Some of them are demanding answers. Rodriguez had been expecting this. The sudden appearance of thousands of advanced human ships could not be hidden. The other galactic powers were beginning to realize that humanity was far more than they had appeared to be. What kind of questions? The Zephyrian Empire wants to know how we developed dimensional weapons. The Stellar Confederation is asking about our ship designs. Some of the smaller powers are accusing us of deceiving them about our technological capabilities. Rodriguez considered the options. The truth would shock the galaxy, but the alternative was to fight the Void Hunters while also dealing with suspicion and fear from their potential allies. Atlas, can we show them the historical records? The Guardian Network has discussed this possibility. We believe selective disclosure would be beneficial. The younger races need to understand what they are fighting. Rodriguez made her decision. Prepare a data package containing the essential history of the First Empire and the Void Hunter threat. We'll share it with the major galactic powers. Admiral, Thompson interrupted. Incoming priority transmission from Captain Walsh. Put him through. Walsh's voice crackled over the communication system. He sounded exhausted but determined. Admiral, the Void Hunters are adapting faster than we expected. They're learning from every attack we make against them. Explain. Our dimensional weapons are still effective, but they're getting less effective with each use. The creatures are evolving defenses in real time, and they're reproducing. Some of our attacks are actually causing them to split into multiple entities. Rodriguez felt her stomach drop. This was worse than the historical records had indicated. Are you saying our weapons are making them stronger? In some cases, yes. Atlas believes they're using our attack energy to fuel their reproductive process. Rodriguez looked at the other officers in the command center. If their primary weapons were helping the enemy, then they needed a new strategy. Atlas, did the First Empire encounter this adaptation behavior? Yes, Admiral. It was one of the primary reasons the war lasted 10,000 years. The Void Hunters learned from every engagement, becoming more resistant to human weapons over time. Then how did our ancestors fight them? They developed new weapons faster than the Void Hunters could adapt. It became an arms race between human innovation and Void Hunter evolution. Peterson stepped forward. Admiral, what if we approach this differently? Instead of trying to destroy them, what if we find a way to contain them? Explain. The historical records mention that the Void Hunters exist partially outside normal space-time. What if we could trap them in a dimensional pocket? Cut them off from their home dimension? Atlas processed this suggestion. Captain Peterson's proposal has merit. The First Empire did experiment with dimensional containment weapons. However, they required enormous amounts of power and precise coordination between multiple ships. Rodriguez studied the fleet deployment map. How many ships would we need for something like that? For a small-scale test, perhaps 50 vessels. For containment of a major Void Hunter force, we would need the entire First Fleet working in coordination. Thompson looked at the communication displays. Admiral, we're receiving requests for assistance from 17 different star systems. The Void Hunters are spreading out, attacking multiple targets simultaneously. Rodriguez realized they were facing the same strategic problem that had defeated the First Empire. The Void Hunters were forcing them to spread their forces too thin. They could not defend everything at once. New plan, she announced. We're going to let them take some systems. The officers looked at her in shock. Admiral? Peterson asked. We evacuate the populations we can save and abandon the systems we cannot defend. We concentrate our forces for a major engagement where we can test the dimensional containment weapons. That means sacrificing entire worlds, Thompson said quietly. Yes, it does. But if we try to defend everything, we'll lose everything. The First Empire learned that lesson the hard way. Rodriguez activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez. We are implementing strategic withdrawal from non-essential systems. Evacuation of civilian populations is the top priority. We will make our stand at coordinates that will be transmitted separately. She turned to Atlas. Begin preparation of dimensional containment weapons. I want them ready for testing within 2 weeks. Understood, Admiral. Rodriguez looked at the galactic map one more time. Red markers showed Void Hunter incursions spreading like a disease across civilized space. But now blue markers were appearing as well, the ancient human fleet moving to meet the threat. The war that had driven humanity into hiding was beginning again. But this time, they had allies. This time, they had the wisdom gained from 400,000 years of preparation. This time, they might actually win. Peterson Thompson, prepare your ships for combat operations. We're going to show the Void Hunters that humanity has learned a few things during our long exile. Yes, Admiral, they replied in unison. Outside Guardian Prime, the First Fleet continued to assemble. Each ship carried the memory of defeat and the hope of redemption. The galaxy would soon learn what humanity was truly capable of when everything they held dear was at stake.